Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Bill. This video is going to be on battlefield magic, war magic, like how the spells in the core rulebook could be used in a more medieval militaristic setting, what interesting stuff you can get out of it, and maybe some new uses you never thought of. If you're interested in the other spells that I've already went over, I've done the first level arcane spells in a video, and I've done the first level divine spells in a video. I am now on to the second level arcane spells. Now we are going to dive into them, and I will look up effects as we need to figure out if there's anything interesting that is not as clear that could make a battlefield battle very entertaining, very deadly, or very much in your favor. So let's dive in now. So arcane lock magically locks portal or chest. If somebody's trying to break in, that could be useful. You could throw that on a door that they're trying to take down to get to you, and then take advantage of the murder holes above if you have them available, or the arrow slits in the wall if you have them. So let's look up that spell, see how effective Hold Portal is. Hold Portal takes a standard action to cast. It's a verbal component. Range is medium, 100 feet plus 10 feet per level. One portal, up to 20 foot per level, 20 square foot per level. Duration 1 minute per level. So you'd be third level by the time you get second level spells, so it lasts about 3 minutes minimum. A knock spell or a dispel magic can negate this spell. If this door is already locked, or you can bar this door, you'll add 5 to the DC for forcing it open. So to optimize it, you'd want to bar it and lock it. Without that, it just adds 5 to the normal DC for forcing open a door. Obscure object. Protects an object from scrying. That could be useful. You could do that on, if it's big enough, you could do that on a tent. Or if you want to modify the spell to do that, you could put that on a tent and everything in the tent can't be scryed on. Put that on part of a wagon train and they can't scry on where you're moving your forces. Next one is protection from arrows. Subject gains DR 10 to magic against ranged attacks. That can be useful, especially if your enemy is using a lot of sling bullets, arrows, crossbows. That could keep your force alive for a good bit. So imagine taking you wouldn't even have to take your whole army. Imagine taking your front row or your front 2 rows and having them have once per day or once per month, or just one use only for that battle only. Protection from arrows. Now, how long does protection from arrows last? Because you could wade into the enemy's archery range and you're not losing your men. And that's a good intimidation. Protection from arrows lasts 1 hour per level, so a minimum of 3 hours. That's enough to change a battle pretty quick. Resist energy. That can be very good. another one-use item you could put on people, or give them potions of it that they can drink ahead of time. You can ignore the first 10 points of damage per attack from a specific energy attack or a type. So, potion for fire. Fire is very common on the battlefield. So, and a normal torch or a normal oil bomb does a d6 fire damage. So, with that, you would be immune to the basic minimum small fires. Acid arrow, ranged touch, attack. That can only be useful for taking out a specific target in an enemy's military force. So it wouldn't be that great. And the damage isn't real high, but it's persistent damage, so that's also very beneficial. Fog cloud. Let's see the area of fog cloud. Range, so it's a little bit better than obscuring mist, I believe. I might have to look that one up again. Fog spreads in 20-foot radius, but the range is medium. You could put it anywhere in 100-foot by 10-foot per level radius, so minimum 130 foot at the level you can cast this. So this is more of a obscuring mist you can put anywhere you want on the battlefield. Glitter dust. Okay, now that would be a cool effect to put on a ranged weapon, or if you could use a shape spell on it before you made it into an item to give your military guys. Normally it's a 10-foot radius spread, so it's a burst effect. So it'd occupy 20 feet total because it's a 10-foot radius. But its normal effects are medium range, 100 feet plus 10 feet per level. So if the spellcaster was casting them themselves, they could cast 130 feet. But if you put this on, say, a projectile, when that projectile impacts a target as its trigger, it could then do a 10-foot radius glitter dust. And it doesn't have to actually be a creature. You could just say when this arrowhead or this bead impacts the surface, the glitter dust goes off. If that's the case, it's a one-use item, so it's going to be pretty cheap. I think somewhere around, I could be wrong, somewhere around 75 to 150 gold pieces for this item. You give a handful of your guys, your archers, this, they could shoot them into the enemy's military formation. So even if they had protection from arrows, like we were talking about earlier, that would really benefit them. Everyone hit by this glitter dust will have to make a will save or be blinded. So you could end up destroying their formation because more than half of their formation is now blinded from glitter dust effects. And if anything was invisible or concealed with like displacement, they would be outlined. Now, the duration of this is only 1 round per level, so this would only last about 3 rounds, but you disrupt their formation for 3 rounds, that gives you a big advantage, because now they have to get back into formation after all that chaos of having their blinded soldiers not being able to do what they need to do. And any creature covered by this dust takes a -40 penalty on their stealth checks. Now imagine putting that with a shape spell on a shield, that you're looking at your enemy forces, they're attacking you, you're holding your shield up, and then it's a cone effect that goes straight out. You could end up blinding a section of the soldiers that way as well. Summon Monster 2, not that useful. Summon Monster really doesn't become useful until 3rd level, when you can start to get multiples of things. Plus, at 3rd level spells, you'll get elementals, so that's where it really starts getting interesting. Summon Swarm. Summon Swarm can be real good, especially since swarms don't take damage normally. Summon Swarm. Close range, 25 feet plus 5 feet per 2 levels. 1 swarm of bats, rats, or spiders. Duration is concentration plus 2 rounds. You summon a swarm of bats, rats, or spiders, your choice, which attacks all creatures within its area. You may summon the swarm so that it shares the area of other creatures. If no living creature is within its area, the swarm attacks or pursues the nearest creature as best it can. The caster has no control over its target or direction of travel. So once it's there, you have no control over it. It just does what it does. So that's not that useful from, say, a spellcasting perspective, but put that on, again, a projectile. When this bead, this arrowhead, impacts the surface, a swarm pops up. Okay, now you just fire it into your soldiers, enemy soldiers, and watch these swarms of rats, bats, whatever, appear and start biting and stinging the hell out of them. The way swarms work is they don't take damage from individual weapons. They have to have area effects to destroy them. And they usually have about 10 to 40 hit points. These, I would say, wouldn't have more than like 10 to 15, but still. When a single torch or a sword can't destroy these, you're looking at a big hurting you're putting on whatever the target is. And you wouldn't need a lot of these. You'd probably only need like 4 or 5 of these to really disrupt the enemy forces. Now, web's a good one. Let's see the area of web. Web could prevent the enemy soldiers from moving towards you. Range is 110 feet per level. So 100 foot plus 30. So it's 130 feet at this level. And it's a 20-foot radius spread, so it's a 40-foot area. Now that's a big area. And it'll stay there for 10 minutes per level. That said, this is web, so it is very flammable. To try to get out of the web, they have to make an escape arts or combat maneuver check to break the web. DC is the same as the spell, so 2nd level you're looking at minimum DC of 14. The only thing is you can't see somebody that's 20 foot into the web, according to this. So that'd be the only downside, but there again, you got a projectile weapon, you got something you could throw, you got something you could impact, drop a couple of webs down, all of a sudden the military can't move. Or at least they can't move in the way they want. Or they have to set fire to the web to get them free, which would cause most of the soldiers to take, even if it's only 1 point, take some fire damage to get free. Detect thoughts. Listen to surface thoughts. That wouldn't be that beneficial unless you were in the part of being a spy, or if you were next to their general or their commander. Locate object, not that useful for military use. See invisibility is useful when you're encountering invisible enemies, but not that great on a mass scale. Daze monster. Daze monster might be useful, but it's only affects a single target, so there's where its limit is. Hideous laughter has the same limit. Touch of idiocy can be very useful in non-war scenarios. Let's see. Continual flame's real good if you're worried about drunk soldiers or very clumsy soldiers from setting things on fire. You can cast continual flames on things, and that'll give you permanent heatless light. Usually it's on torches, but you could put it on candles. You could put it on oil lamp. That doesn't even have any oil in it. Darkness, 20-foot radius. That can be useful. You drop a darkness in the middle of their formation. Now they don't know what the hell's going on. They can hear still. They just can't see what's going on. Flaming sphere. Now that can be a big disruptor of the battlefield. You throw this rolling ball of fire into the forces and watch them catch fire. Just try not to let them smother it, otherwise it goes out prematurely. And that thing can catch things on fire, so that'd be real useful too if your forces were, say, before they engaged in melee combat, they threw flasks of oil at the enemies, hitting and soaking some of the enemies, if not most of them, and then that ball of fire comes through. Now they're on fire, burning for more rounds than just the flaming sphere would have been there. Gust of wind's real good. It can make it real hard for archers to shoot at you. It can knock down small creatures. It can blow away obscuring mist and the fog spells. Scorching ray can set things on fire, so same thing there. Touch attack. Shatter. Shatter can be useful, but I wouldn't emphasize that too much in a military game. Blur can be real good on your champions or whatnot if you were doing an individual. Now, if your military has the potential to use this on your soldiers, if your front line of soldiers are all affected by blur, then that front line will have advantage because most of the enemies aren't hitting you when your two forces collide. So if you put that, say, on a shield, you put that on an armor, you put that on as a potion that they could drink. It just need to be a one-use item that military has access to that could really change how that combat's going to go. Hypnotic pattern. It can fascinate a huge number of hit dice of creatures, but the maximum hit dice would have its limits. So I wouldn't consider that one that useful unless you were fighting a lot of weak things like goblins and stuff. Invisibility, not that useful in a military situation where it's soldier versus soldiers, like big armies versus big armies, but that's great for scouting, for spying, the things that you would want a regular party to do, not what you want the whole military to do. Magic mouth, object speaks once when triggered. You could get very creative with that. That could be very entertaining. But yet again, unless you could say record the enemy commander giving a command and then use that magic mouth spell to put it on something, it couldn't be that useful in combat. Now, if you get that command on that object and you get that object into where it could be very useful, where he commands his soldiers to turn and run, or he commands his soldiers to bear right when he needs his forces to be going left based on what's going on in the battle. That could be very entertaining and very useful. Minor image. You can make your, I'm assuming it's one image though. Minor image, you can make your force seem a little bit bigger, but that's not, like I said, great. Mirror image creates decoy duplicates of you. Now that can really make your force look huge. You get half your soldiers to have that on an item, one use, and they use that as the forces begin to line up and form formation. Now all of a sudden there's like 3, 4, 5 per soldier that use that. Extra soldiers on the battlefield, equipped how they are equipped, in formation how they're in formation. And when the fake one's attacked, it goes away, but that's only one that goes away. So that can be very useful. Misdirection. Misdirection would be useful against spying because it misleads divinations. So spying by scrying. Phantom trap, make an item seem trapped. That can be useful for securing your documents versus spies. Blindness, deafness is a single subject, so not that great for a military use. Command undead. Command undead will be useful in military use, especially if the enemy's military is undead. False life, gain 10 temporary, 1d10 temporary HP plus 1 hit point per level. Ghoul touch. So false life's not going to be that useful because that's only a single target. Ghoul touch, paralyze one subject. That could be useful because of the secondary effect, not because of the first effect. First effect of Ghoul touch, it paralyzes one subject. Secondary effect, that subject now begins to exude a stench that makes those nearby sickened. So that would give them penalties to fighting. Wouldn't be great penalties, but all advantage is a good advantage in a battle. Scare frightens creatures of less than 6 hit dice. But that doesn't tell me how many. I'm going to assume it's not going to be that great, but let's look it up to make sure. Scare. Medium range, 100 feet plus 10 feet per level, so 130 feet-ish at this level. 1 living creature per 3 levels, so there's the limit. So you could get 2 creatures at the time you get this, and it lasts. They'll be affected by the fear for 1 round per level, so 3 rounds. And the hit dice max is 6, so any creature that's 6 hit dice or less, you could scare that way. Spectral Hand creates disembodied glowing hand to deliver touch attacks. That could be useful as a spellcaster in a smaller situation, but not in a battlefield situation, unless you have a touch attack that has a big area effect. Alter Self, make you look like a smaller or bigger person, different person, so on and so forth. Really good for disguising yourself, really good for spying if you're spying. Bear's Endurance, Bull Strength, Cat's Grace. Anything that boosts stats isn't going to be that great in a war scenario since it's an individual target. Once you get into mass effects where you could get a group of guys, that'd be good. Now, if you wanted this effect to be on your soldiers, though, outside of just being that, they could A, have potions of this and drink it before the battle begins. Or if the military has enough wins or has enough financial backing, you could get one-use items or once-per-day items that do this, that they can then use. I have a belt of bull strength once per day as a military item. I say the command word, and I get the effects of bull strength. It could either last minutes or it could last hours. Its duration as a one-use item, like once per day, wouldn't matter as much as long as it didn't spill into more than like an hour or so. as a military application. Once it goes into longer than that, you're going to look at an item that's going to be expensive to make, expensive to mass produce. You could even, if you wanted to make the item cheaper, make it once per week. They could use it. Dark vision could be useful if you could give all your soldiers access to, say, goggles of dark vision, or one use item wise, give them potions of dark vision or something of the sort. Because if you take a whole bunch of humans fighting at night, they now have access to dark vision. Well, whatever was fighting them is no longer having the advantage that they thought they would have. Eagle Splendor, there's a stat boost. Fox's Cunning, stat boost. Knock opens locked or magically sealed doors, so that would counter that whole portal we were talking about earlier. Levitate, subject moves up and down at your direction. Let's see if you can use that offensively. Or let's see if I can come up with more ideas to use that offensively. Levitate. Standard action to cast. You need a focus, a leather loop, or golden wire bent into a cup shape. Verbal and somatic to cast. Range is close or personal. 25 feet plus 5 feet per 2 levels. So at this one you would have 30 feet. You or one willing creature, so it has to be a willing creature, because there's no saving throw, no spell resistance. Or one object. Total weighs up to 100 pounds per level. So if you're going to use this on an object, you could pick, at this level, you could pick 300-pound object. The first thing that comes to mind is picking up a 200, 300-pound rock and dropping it. All you're doing is moving it up or down. So you move it up and then you just end the spell. Now it's under freefall. What would happen if you move it up and somebody pushes the object? Would it still float? It's possible. Now, if that's not possible, there's other things. You can use this as a means to get from one location in a dungeon to another. So this would, if you wanted to isolate levels in a fort, you could do that with this. Like there's no stairs that go from one place to another. Instead, you need levitate to go from one floor to another. That would really slow down an enemy that is not prepared or aware of that. In addition to that, you could take a barrel filled with oil or alchemist fire, levitate it up, and then under the right conditions, military approaches, they're attacking the door, whatever, drop it. If it's alchemist fire, hopefully it breaks open when it impacts, but it should. And it would set itself on fire. If it's oil, you just got to follow it with some fire. Make whole, repairs an object. Now that would be useful to keep your military well equipped and well maintained. So the damaged armor after the battle, the nicked swords, the nicked weapons, the damaged weapons, that could fix most of those. Owl's Wisdom, another stat booster. Pyrotechnics. That might be useful in a military scale. Pyrotechnics. Standard action. You need a fire source. So the fire source has to be there before you cast this spell. Range is a 400 feet plus 40 feet per level. So now you're looking at battlefield ranges. So that's good. One fire source up to 20 feet cube. So 20-foot cube. Cool. That's a pretty good area. Duration, 1d4 plus 1 rounds or 1d4 plus 1 rounds after the creatures leave the smoke cloud. So you have your choice. It could be fireworks, flashy, fiery burst. All the creatures in 120 feet. Okay, so now you're looking at a big area of effect. Of the fire source become blinded for 1d4 plus 1 rounds. Smoke cloud. A stream of smoke billows out from the fire, forming a choking cloud that spreads 20 feet in all directions and lasts for 1 round per caster level. So your better bet is the firework option in a military perspective to really get you the most bang for your buck on how many it can blind. But if the military or the section of military you want to attack with that isn't that numerous, say you're attacking the cavalry guys around the fire, then the smoke cloud could be useful because they wouldn't know where they're going. They'd be choking on the smoke. And then if something's going on with the other group, you'd have that going on. Rope trick would be useful for your small strike force, for your spies, because as many as 8 creatures hide in extra dimensional space. Spider climb would be useful in a strike force application, but not necessarily in a wide military application unless you can give them all use of it for a short period of time, because that could make a difference if you needed to sneak into an enemy's fort by climbing up the cliff behind it. If they have access to spider climb, they could scale the walls super fast and get into position to attack, especially if the enemy is 100% confident that no one can get up that way. Whispering Wind sends a short message 1 mile per level. That could be useful for communication between forces that are not actively grouped together. And that's my take on what I got out of the second level spells, of the Arcane. I will do 2nd level Divine next, and then I'll go into the 3rd, 4th, 5th level. I'm going to stop at 5th level. Like, I'm not going to do 6th level spells or higher, because at that point they should be enough to change a battlefield on their own without having to be creative. And then you could be creative on top of that and really destroy the enemy forces. Some of these things could also be used in naval combat, so think of that as well. Well, until we meet again.